Hi Peaches, it's Shaba. Welcome back and thank you for clicking on another episode. It's Monday, you know what that means. It's time for us to go fishing for a-holes. What are we reeling in first? A Surfshark. A big thank you to Surfshark for sponsoring today's video. If you don't already know, Surfshark is a VPN, a virtual private network with over 3,000 servers all around the world, working really hard to keep you safe, whilst also helping you unlock all of these things with a virtual location. And that includes unlocking content libraries from all around the world so you can watch your favorite shows and films no matter where you are. Films like the Final Destination series, hands down one of the best movie franchises in existence. Have you seen it? Doesn't matter, sit down, let me recap it for you. So every movie starts with the main character getting this premonition about how they and all of their friends are taken by death. And their panic causes so much chaos that they and their friends inevitably get taken away from the situation, but then what they saw comes true and they've been saved, but everyone else, and that makes Death really mad because he's like, oi, you and your mates were scheduled today at 2 o'clock. I'm coming for you. Because it's all part of Death's design, is this whole thing. So then throughout the movie, all of the friends who have been saved get a little cute little cozy visit by Death, you know, and it always happens in ways that you don't expect it. Someone could be cooking in the kitchen and you're like, I see you chopping those vegetables, but then it ends up being the tea bag that was faithful all along. So the protagonist, right, figures out that Death's design is like coming into play and they're like, crap, how do I protect the rest of us? And that's when Surfshark, the hero of the movie, comes along. Surfshark's like, don't sweat it, babe. With my masked IP address feature, you can change your virtual location as many times as you want. So Death spends decades trying to find them, fails, but has some pretty wonderful holidays along the way. And Death tries again using phishing attempts to steal the main character's private information from their online browsing, but Surfshark's like, pew pew, not today. What? The end. That's absolutely how the movie goes. You heard it here first. And if you want to verify if my rendition is correct, you can watch the Final Destination series along with all other movies and TV shows on content libraries worldwide using Surfshark VPN. And because Surfshark's feeling particularly kind, you can use this link, surfshark.com/Shaba, or this cute little QR code and my code Shaba at checkout to get an extra 4 months in addition to keep you connected and safe. I speak about it enough. I use Surfshark every single day. You can use it on an unlimited number of devices, and they also have a 30-day money-back guarantee, so there is no drama here. You can check out further details using the link downstairs in my description box. For now, let's get on with the show. You're through to 1-800-DRAMA, the show where you share your biggest dilemmas and I help you navigate them. I'm Shaba, and with your help,
and sometimes mine,
let's help people figure out if they are the drama, because sometimes you just need an outside perspective, and we can all expand our own mindsets along the way. Are you ready to dive deep into the a-holes? Let's go. Am I the drama for telling my wife I want a divorce? Oh no, after she gave me a concussion. Whenever I film, I'm always in like a really happy mood, and then I remember that some of these scenarios are actually really quite sad, but it's cool because we're trying to help people out. We're growing our mindsets along the way. This is why. A big thank you to the Peach who cross-posted this onto the 1-800-DRAMA subreddit. Let's see if we can help some people out. OP says, after work, I was playing with my son and I went to the kitchen to throw out a diaper, as you do. When I walked into the room, my wife started shouting at me, claiming that I hadn't been doing anything since I got home. Mind you, I just spent 2 hours cleaning the kitchen, washing dishes, picking up the living room. I imagine you mean picking up things in the living room, that's fine. And putting my daughter to bed before going to the living room to play with my son whilst I continued to pick up. Wow, that sounds like you've done a lot. I can see why that might be frustrating. I was frustrated, says OP, by her comment, and asked her what she meant and outlined everything that I had been doing. Let's point out that this is great communication. We love a Peach that's not getting inflated and being like rah rah rah, but being like, hey, look at the evidence. I get it, you've not been in my shoes, but my shoes have been tied in for the past 2 hours. I left the room, says OP, and I started to walk up the stairs to my living room when I was struck in the side of a head with a sealed cardboard box that weighed about 2 pounds. Whoa, okay, this is a heavy one to start with, but this is very not okay. This was from about 15 feet away and thrown at full force, so I was dazed for a moment. After confronting her about why she did this, okay, so the wife hit you with a box, she continued to yell at me and didn't show any concern. Let's read on. Upset and in quite a bit of pain, I went to sit with my son and process what had just happened. After about 45 minutes, I was experiencing a growing headache and having some problems with the muscles in the right side of my face and jaw. And right now, Shaba's head has just connected the title to this, you've got concussion, right? I need to answer this because my silly ADHD brain is asking a very silly question. I need to also point out this is not at all related to contextually whether it was an okay thing or not to do. Throwing something at someone and invading their physical space in any harmful way is not okay. What is 2 pounds? This is the question that's like buried in my mind. Bear with.
A few moments later.
Okay, so that's like 0.9 of a kilogram. This is like the equivalent of throwing a bag of sugar, which from any distance is going to hurt, let's be honest, to the head, but especially from 15 feet away and at full force. Oh my gosh. I'm sorry if that sounded really weird. I just in my head needed to understand that context a little bit more. Let's read on. So OP's experiencing a growing headache and some pain in the right side of the face and jaw. I gave her my son and I told her that I had to go to the ER because something wasn't right. I ended up spending the night in a hotel, presumably because he didn't feel safe going home maybe, and the next day began contacting resources and scheduling following medical and mental health appointments. Wow, I feel like I have so many questions, but let's try and read on. The headache lasted 8 days, says OP, and I experienced a wide range of symptoms related to head injury. I missed over a full week of work, and it's been a pretty difficult experience navigating all of my emotions, understandably babe, whilst recovering and experiencing some bizarre cognitive issues. I have never had concussion, but from what I understand, it affects people very differently, and some have like really severe reactions, others not so much, and the cognitive span of what symptoms can be, you wouldn't think that that could come from concussion. The one thing though that is really consistent is how long it takes to get over and how that is not a linear journey. So even just putting aside the emotional turmoil and sort of like processing that someone would need to do, understanding that this has come from a loved one, like from within your safety of trust, from within your own house, just the fact alone that you could be dealing with that and then being like, oh, I think I'm fine. Oh wait, gosh, no, I'm not. The fact that it's impacting things like work, goodness knows what's happening with your children right now. This is not okay. Needless to say, OP continues, I've been keeping my distance from my wife whilst I've been recovering. Over the last few years, says OP, I've also been dealing with regular emotional abuse. No. In the form of insults, constant belittling, and threats of divorce. This is probably the 6th incident of violent behaviour from her in the last 7 years, and the only time that she's used an object, and I have serious concerns that she could have just as easily thrown something that could have broken my skull. Ooh, you know what? This is very heavy, and in some ways a little triggering, and this might sound like a really odd thing to say, but I'm really glad that I'm being confronted by this experience for the opportunity to really hammer home that any kind of mistreatment in a relationship can happen within any gender dynamic. I think it's something that we don't see very often, and already I'm having to confront my brain, recognizing this safe space. I need to be really honest with you and recognize that one of the first thoughts that I had, and maybe that's also why I felt the need to look into the weight of something, which actually, if you think about it, is kind of weird, right? I was needing to clarify that level of force because I do think there's a part of me that's just like, you're a guy and she's your wife. How hard could it have been? I'm not saying this is how I feel. Please don't misunderstand me. I'm saying that these are considerations that come into my brain that I then have to bat aside and be like, whoa, hang on a second. We don't need to think that. Why are we needing to think that? And I know it's because society for the longest time has ingrained within all of us the idea that a power dynamic between a man and a woman automatically puts men at a strength advantage and automatically puts men in an emotional disadvantage. I'm so glad. It's almost refreshing to hear OP say things like, I needed to keep my distance and so I went to a hotel and I've been booking myself into mental health resources, and I'm realizing that actually over a grander period of time, a longer period of time, this falls into a larger pattern of behavior that's not okay. Because the amount of men who are not able to talk about that, the amount of men who feel shut down and like they are not allowed to complain because they're a man, is too many men. It's too many men. So good on you, OP. This feels incredibly difficult and I'm just here objectively reading it. I cannot imagine how hard this must be for you, especially considering that wider network of kids. But I'm really glad that this post is out there to help yourself and also other people who may be in that same place. Give them the permission to go, even though I'm a man, 1, my mental health matters too. 2, my physical boundaries do not deserve to be broken, just like a woman's would not, or a non-binary person's would not, because you are allowed to talk about this. Let's get to the end of the post though, I'm definitely waffling. OP continues, I'm now seriously concerned about what will happen the next time, and I'm not willing to wait and find out, only to realise that I should have left long ago. My wife has no diagnosed mental health disorders, but how out of control she is when she's angry is now very alarming, and it seems to be escalating. Additionally, she refuses to apologise for any of her words or actions since I met her, even after I diagnosed concussion. Wow. I think it's one thing to do something. It's one thing to not be in any way apologetic, especially after seeing the impact of this, the time off work, going to hospitals, the bills. The fact that you use the term ER suggests that you're probably not in the UK and therefore most likely in a place that has private healthcare. And dude, if your wife was concerned about you not doing enough when you were actively cleaning the house, imagine how much additional weight your parenting has on her side, all the extra responsibilities she's having to uptake because you've been out for so long. To not be able to see that you caused that and recognize that this is a problem is a bigger red flag to me. Well, not a bigger, but just as big as a red flag to me as doing the act in the first place. And again, I'm having to like really question myself. I'm thinking the society check yourself Shaba line that I'm trying to look at is, am I trying to find behaviors to excuse this person? The answer is no to that. I'm trying to find behaviors to understand why someone would do something like this to someone that they do clearly love. You don't marry someone and have children with someone and build a life with someone in this way with someone that you don't like. So clearly there is a reason that OP's wife is upset that's causing her to react in this first place. And I don't think spending some time to understand what that is excusing any kind of behavior, but an important way to understand and address the root of the problem if this relationship has any sort of way of sort of pushing forward, whether that is something that OP wants to do. And the second check myself is, am I thinking this and feeling perhaps more sensitive and more inclined to want to understand where that behavior is coming from because she is a wife? Let's apply that. If the tables were turned and this was a husband doing it to a wife, would anybody be saying, would I be here saying, hey, we also need to think about why this happened, not as a way to excuse, but to understand? And I think my answer is yes, I would. I do think that I would be treating it with a harder, heavier brush, which is where I need to check myself. But I still think that on both fronts, it is important to just understand where that's coming from. Stop waffling, Shaba. Let's finish off the post. All she will say regarding this event are things like, you know, I didn't mean it. I can't aim that well. That is not okay. That is total bullshit. And that is not something that we would let pass if a guy did this. This is absolutely not something that we let pass with a wife doing this. I do think that there are times when you can say things like that. Things like, I didn't mean it. And that's if, for example, you know, sorry, I'm not laughing because I know this is a grave situation. I'm just thinking about something that I did where I had a glass of water and my sister was sitting there, and on a whim, I don't know what I was thinking, I picked up the glass very much assuming it was empty. I went whoop like that, but there was water in it and it went all over her. And for a set moment, we're all sat there just like, ugh. That's the kind of scenario where you can say, I didn't mean it. But throwing a box at someone, especially where the result of that is causing concussion, is very different to thinking you're miming a glass of water. OP finishes the post by saying, over the last week, I was essentially living in a blacked out bedroom and listening to audiobooks between my frequent naps. No, concussion. Up to yesterday, I've avoided engaging her in conversation or anything that seems like I'm being battled into an argument. I think that's quite telling in itself, right? What I'm reading from that is that OP has been trying to engage in meaningful discussion and is only receiving defensiveness. I do not have the emotional or mental capacity to handle an emotionally charged conversation, and I want to focus on my recovery. Understandable. Last night, OP says, I told her that I've been walking on eggshells around her for the last year. I'm not comfortable being around her, and I don't see there being any way to mend the relationship after this. I just don't see myself being able to emotionally open up to someone who has injured me ever. Ooh. See, this is interesting. I totally understand what's going on. And of course, I think it's very clear that the only appropriate badge in this situation is not the drama. The wife is absolutely the drama. But like with many of these stories, we're not really doing this for the badge. It's the advice and the discussions and learning moments that we can take from a situation that's more important than the badge. And I personally find myself questioning that last sentence a little bit. And I wonder how truthful that is from OP. Bear with me. There are two scenarios which I think are worth exploring. If we take the sentence, I just don't see myself being able to emotionally open up to someone who has injured me ever. I totally respect why someone would say that. And I would absolutely support someone whose line and boundary for a relationship was drawn there. But I also think we do need to take in the wider sense of context as well. And I wonder if OP would be saying the same thing if the outcome was different. What if the box didn't hit the wall instead and created a dent? If that happened where it didn't hit you, but you know that it could have done, and that's not actually based on OP's wife's intentions, but just based on a matter of chance or circumstance, that line's a little bit different, right? That line then becomes, I'm not willing to emotionally open up to someone who attempts to injure me ever. But the other way, and perhaps the most important way that I feel like my line would be drawn a little bit different, and that doesn't mean that OP's bad for having his line drawn there, but my personal line would have to consider that context. Sometimes we can be injured without intent. For example, if Jamie and I are carrying furniture, sometimes it can get heavy or he can move it too quickly and it means that my thumb bashes against the wall. Obviously, he didn't mean for that to happen. I can have a shout and a rage moment and he can apologize and it can be done. This is so loaded. There is so much nuance to that. And I'm also considering that this is the 6th incident, right? Like OP said that over the last 7 years, this is the 6th incident of violent behavior. Clearly, the wife has some anger issues, anger management issues, emotion regulation issues. And I wonder if there has been any opportunity for the wife to address and grow from that first. And I do just want to point out here, I am not at all trying to excuse the behavior of the wife. The wife is absolutely the drama in this situation. It is not okay that she did that. Nothing can excuse what she's done. There are some scenarios where there's no right person, wrong person. In here, the wife is wrong. 100%. And thinking about why that wife does what she does, OP also has every right and prerogative to say, no, I don't want to entertain this in any way, whether it was the first incident, 6th incident, 20th incident. If OP doesn't want to deal with it and OP doesn't want to be there to accommodate for that growth, that is OP's choice, and that is absolutely fine and not something that OP should be judged for. At the same time, I really hope that the wife and anybody else who might be in these situations comes to realizing that there is a power in knowing where that comes from and growing from that behavior. And without going into an emotional breakdown myself, I think this is something that we see so much in South Asian culture. I grew up in a family and in a culture where physical punishment was second nature. And when I say physical punishment, sometimes in Western society, when I've explored this concept with therapists or with friends or other people, they're like, yeah, physical punishment. I don't think people realize just how severe that physical punishment can be and just how varied that concept of physical punishment is. And whilst I can resent and hate and not want to go anywhere near anybody who is physically abusive, I need to know and I need to hope that those people are able to be confronted, even if it's not by these people who need to walk away. They need to be confronted by someone to be able to grow from those behaviors and not continue doing them, because that's how generational trauma happens. And it takes a lot of strength to do that, because it either means admitting that you're a horrible person or that you're a person that does horrible things. But that acceptance is the first way to stop doing those horrible things. Whew, this is so heavy. OP continues by saying her response has been to schedule marriage counselling, and she keeps making strange comments about how I have to be willing to make it work for counselling to be effective. I mean, yes, that is true, that both of you have to be in it if you want that to be effective, but what I don't want anyone to take away from that, or for OP to lose in that, is that it's OP's right as to whether OP wants to do it in the first place. OP says, my wife doesn't seem to have the ability to understand that this won't ever be water under the bridge, and that she's destroyed what was left of our relationship, which isn't much, as there's been no physical intimacy in 2 years due to some medical complications from the pregnancy and birth of our son. Interesting. I feel like that's very enlightening and a good reminder that, like everything that we see on these internet forums, what we see is a snippet of somebody's life, and it's really easy to judge one isolated incident, but there's so much context and nuance there. Perhaps this lack of physical intimacy and everything else that has sort of gone along with that, because clearly that lack of physical intimacy is a byproduct of something that's been happening, perhaps that is also the reason why your wife is lashing out. Not to say that she's right in doing so, but definitely something that should be explored. And it maybe kind of sounds like that's something that your wife needs to do in individual therapy. What I'm reading between the lines, which might not be what OP's wife means, is that there's a lot of shifting of accountability. It's, I didn't mean to. I don't have very good aim. You know that. You need to be willing to want to make counselling work. Sure, babe, but you have a lot of work to do first. And the sad reality is, in these situations, OP might not be willing to put that work in. There are absolutely situations where relationships could be salvaged, but if one person doesn't want to, if their line has been broken too many times or too harshly and they don't wish to repair that, that's entirely their prerogative too. OP continues to say she refuses physical contact, and lately I've been struggling with the idea of continuing to live in this strange celibate lifestyle for the sake of maintaining a stable home for my children. I've been open about this with my close friends and mentors, and I know I need to leave because domestic violence rarely stops, and I want better for me and my children. And the children thing makes it so much more complicated, right? I can understand why some people maintain family networks for the sake of that family network, but where my head goes to is, if these things are not being addressed within, there's just going to be more resentment that will make that insular network far more toxic than two separate, healthier networks where both people are growing. And secondly, and very importantly, if somebody who is causing violence, physical violence in particular, does not learn to regulate their emotions properly and not do that, what happens when it's not just you that it's happening to? What happens when it's the kids as well? Which is what makes things like this so serious. I decided to pursue divorcing her, says OP, and I think a large part of telling so many people is to force my own hand due to the embarrassment and shame that staying with her would cause. Kind of like accountability buddies? Or ripping that band-aid off? It's such a shame that adjectives like embarrassment and shame have to even come into this, and I do think that plays into that gender dynamic that we were talking about beforehand. This is definitely something that men will feel more. But again, I'm so glad it's not putting OP off from getting the support that he needs. I told the therapist this, and that I want his help navigating towards this goal, but I'm having a very hard time. I'm struggling with the idea of tearing my family apart and the effect that it will have on my 4-year-old daughter. Today, says OP, my wife was being unusually sweet and wanted to sit with me. When I refused, she made me out to be an arsehole and accused me of, quote, not wanting to try. I feel like I'm being heavily manipulated, and my desire to be the peacemaker and nurturer is being twisted against me. And when I mentioned this, she got highly offended and accused accused me of wanting to destroy our family. Oh no. I definitely think it's really important to recognize with a giant glaring spotlight that this in itself is a form of abuse. This here is manipulative, emotional, coercive, and gaslighty behavior. To be like, you're the problem. And if you allow me to be my little pitter-pattery Shaba just for a second, I think it's also important to recognize that that could not be the wife's intention, but it's definitely what the outcome is. OP's wife may not be sitting there thinking, I am going to manipulate this situation. I'm going to make you feel like you should be worried and that's why you shouldn't leave. I'm going to blackmail you into feeling like you need to stay in this family. Yes, let's do that. That could be an option, but also it could be that the wife's really terrible way of regulating emotions just manifests in that way, and OP's wife doesn't realize that she's even doing that herself. And I'm holding on to that because that is what therapy can really help solve. It can make you confront things like that and learn to deal with things in a significantly healthier way. But again, you have to be willing to do that. And it all comes down to one word: accountability. And it feels like wife is not taking any of that in this situation. This has been a wild experience, says OP, and it's been difficult to process. I have no experience with emotional or physical abuse in a relationship before this. Am I therefore being the drama for refusing to entertain opening up to her or participating in couples therapy due to a fear of being manipulated? Should I stick to what I know to do intellectually and totally ignore my emotions and stick to my initial instinct to leave her? Well, the easiest question there is, am I being the drama? And absolutely, babe, you are not the drama. For anyone else who may be in a situation like this, because it is far too common for people to feel manipulated in relationships, you know in your gut when something is not right. If you are not being treated with the love and respect that you deserve, you do not need to stay in that relationship. If your safe space is no longer safe, you do not need to put up with it. It is that simple. What I will say is it sounds like OP knows what OP wants to do. If you've mentioned it to friends, if you've said to your therapist that you are deciding to pursue a divorce, and if you are concerned for your kids, which obviously can be a concern whether you stay or not, and there can be different ways to deal with that. All of these lines make me feel like you've kind of made that decision, OP, and that OP knows that he wants to leave. And I just feel like someone needs to say to OP, you have permission to allow your wife to go through that therapist journey without you. You do not have to hang around. And whilst of course you're going to have to think about the kids in this situation, the best thing that you can do for your kids is the best thing that you can do for yourself. And if that's staying in that relationship, in the meantime making sure that there are safeguards so that you and your kids are not abused further, fine, if that's what you want to do. But if it's breaking up, you shouldn't feel bad, because if you do feel bad and on that sole reason only, just for the sake of your family staying together, that's why you choose to stay, the resentment that that's going to cause is going to make your relationship eternally unhealthy, and it will always be a problem that will make an even more toxic environment for your kids than if you just decided to do what felt right for you. Let's look at some comments on the forum. Not the drama, this time it's you, next time it could be your kids. Absolutely, I can understand how as a parent this is something that would be top of mind for a lot of people. Not the drama, I'm sorry, I know this isn't what you wanted for your marriage and that absolutely sucks, but you're not safe where you are and you need to leave. This is serious business. The last thing you want to show your kid is that this relationship is okay, that being treated this poorly and being harmed like this is acceptable. If you wanted to, you could go into family counselling with the goal of figuring out how to be good, healthy co-parents for your kids, but you're done being married to someone who hurts you. The work here looks like taking care of your kids, not mollifying someone who hurts you when they're mad. I 1,000,000% see where this comment is coming from, and I agree with it 99.9%. The only thing that I would add, this is again how I'm feeling like maybe this could have come across as controversial, which is not at all what I'm intending. My line for abuse, especially things like physical abuse, is very set. There are many examples of really successful relationships and successful family networks where people have stayed together after someone has grown. I think, and I'm definitely being skewed by my own bias here and being within South Asian communities, but there are so many people who have learnt from a young age physical anger and aggression, whether that be towards people or even things, is not an okay thing to do, but is what you do to regulate emotion. And it is not okay. But I just wanted to highlight that in these situations, just because someone's done something once, if they learn from that, we shouldn't chastise them for the rest of their lives for it. We don't forget, but we can move past if they have grown from that experience. And so I don't want people who may be in positions where they've been with people who have really, when I say hurt them, I don't mean physically hurt them, just hurt them as a person to then feel ashamed or embarrassed for the relationships that they're in, because people are absolutely allowed the opportunity to grow. At the same time, it's really important to point out that you do not owe anybody an opportunity to grow. Whether you are there for that moment of growth or not is entirely up to you. Domestic violence happens to both genders. It absolutely does. And I think this is a really prime example. If I'm being really honest, I was going to abandon this partway through. This is not a post that I would typically look into, but I think it's important, especially in these days of adolescence, that we keep these conversations up front and really highlight that men often need support too. And best of luck, OP. Whatever you do, I hope you're making the right moves for you. That's ultimately how you're going to make the right moves for your family network too. Woo, that was a tough one. Go grab yourself a cuppa. We'll move on to the next. Drama. This is another cross post recommended from a fellow peach on 1-800-DRAMA. Am I the drama for telling my sister that I won't be her maid of honor because she didn't come to my wedding due to her dog dying? We didn't go for some easy ones today, did we? OP says, I'm a 28-year-old woman and I got married last year. It was a small but beautiful ceremony with our closest family and friends. My older sister, 32, and I have always had a complicated relationship. We're close, but she's also extremely emotional and kind of dramatic. Hey, there is nothing wrong with a little bit of drama. I joke. I can see how that can be frustrating. I can also see how that's just a bit of a personality trait. I have so many friends who are just outright divas. 24/7 divas. And I'm here for it. She was supposed to be my maid of honor, says OP. 2 days before my wedding, her 14-year-old dog passed away unexpectedly. No. The unexpectedly must really hurt as well. I was obviously sympathetic, says OP, but she called me sobbing, saying that she couldn't emotionally handle coming to the wedding because she was too devastated. It was very clear that this is direction from the title. How do we feel about that? I have mixed feelings. Normally I have like a gut that's like, yes, this is the right thing to do. No, this is not the right thing to do. And right now my gut's like, Let's read on. I tried to talk her down, says OP, even offered to have someone bring her home early if it was too much, but she refused and she didn't show up. I can see this from two sides. I can tell that she's grieving. I can tell that, gosh darn timing, even though you're sympathetic, you're also focused on your wedding and you want your sister to be there. And she's the maid of honor. It hurt a lot, says OP. She missed one of the biggest days of my life and I had no maid of honor. We didn't talk much after that. A few months ago, she got engaged and just last week asked me to be her maid of honor. I told her that I couldn't. I said I still felt hurt that she missed my wedding, and while I love her, I just couldn't pretend that everything was fine. She got extremely upset, said that I was being cold and petty, and that her dog was like her child. Our parents are pressuring me to just be the bigger person. I honestly don't know anymore. Am I the drama for saying no? This is such an interesting one. Firstly, huge sympathetics to the past papa. That sucks. That sucks, and I often feel that when we come into these situations, there are two types of people in the world. The first type are the people who, honestly, just being very brash with it, have pets and understand how important pets are in the emotional well-being of a life. They're the people who treat pets like any other members of the family and recognize that 14 years together is a really long time to have had a squish. Whether that be a human squish or a fur squish, is still a squish. There are other people who seem to really hate the idea that that is a thing and that is mentioned. And those people are like, an animal is not a baby. An animal is not a child, and often they don't have pets themselves, but they don't understand at all how people can view pets and grieve for pets in the same way that you would for a human family member. To these people, I say, with love, stay in your lane. And I also recognize that I'm saying this not having children of my own yet. I understand that we don't compare babies to kittens. I'm a cat mama. I'm not a human mama yet. And I know that there is a difference between them. However, if my cats were to die and somebody was to in any way push aside my grief or say that I don't deserve to grieve, purely coming from that place that they don't understand that connection, then they shouldn't be speaking about those things at all, because these little squishes, like, they spend just as much time with us, often more than some of the family members that we see. The emotional reliance we have on pets, there's a reason that there are emotional support animals and that they literally help save lives. And I'm not saying that only grief can be reserved for emotional support animals. Even non-emotional support animals on an official capacity, right, provide emotional support. I'm pretty sure the stats are that pets increase our happiness on average about 20 to 25 times a day. They make us smile that much more. They release our endorphins that much more. And they're like forever babies. So of course you're going to have this like caring, nurturing feeling for them because they're a little bit dumb. So I totally respect that you are grieving. And honestly, I just see this as really poor timing, which I know may be a very cold way to look at it, but I don't blame your sister for not coming to your wedding. I can understand the stress that that makes you feel. And I understand that that bad timing can absolutely be interpreted treated as, you know, almost forcing you to feel like you come second to a pet. But I genuinely don't think that's what's happening. I'm just trying to be really realistic. If someone was that grieving as well, this has just happened. When was the wedding? 2 days. And some people deal with grief differently. Clearly, OP's sister does not deal with this grief well. They are sobbing. They are dramatic in OP's words. They cannot emotionally handle coming to the wedding, and they have suggested that to you. If they did come anyway, they forced themselves to come because they realize this is a really big opportunity. How useful would they really be as that maid of honor? How much support and comfort would they be able to give you on your wedding day when they are going through that themselves? If they are not the kind of person that can compartmentalize and put that aside for your day, maybe they're also thinking of you in that decision, and they don't want to be a crying mess, and they don't want to draw attention and have people being like, oh my gosh, why is so-and-so crying? Is there beef? Is there drama? Like bad kind of drama to do with you guys and your wedding? So maybe that's also been part of OP's sister's decision to OP as to why she didn't come. To be honest, in every single wedding that I have gone to, and I have been to quite a few, there are people who are little emotional wrecks for different reasons. I've seen people attend and spoken to people who have come with really, really heavy personal loss, but didn't want to miss out on that moment in order to support a friend. I've had to leave weddings early because me and my loved ones have experienced things that have just meant that we were not in a place to be in a happy celebratory environment. And I don't think any of that is a reflection on the bride or the wedding. And when I say not reflection, what I mean is I don't think that's a negative reflection that says, hey, I value you less. If anything, it means I value you more because I don't want to take away from the beauty of your day. All of this being said, I also want to be very upfront with I wouldn't do what OP's sister did. I genuinely feel like if I was in this position, I can only, think about my cats. If my cats passed away unexpectedly and the next day, not even 2 days, my sister was getting married, I would still go to my sister's wedding and I'd find a way to deal with those two feelings, and it wouldn't be easy, but I feel like that's something that I would need to do to make it work. But we're not all the same, and I don't think it makes someone a negative drama for not being able to do that. I don't even think it's a sense of weakness. It's just a different way of processing emotion. Now for you to now say that you're not going to be her maid of honor, I see where your sister is coming from with the comment of being cold and petty. One thing that we need to realize here is that any way you look at this, it is a petty move. To say, I am not going because you didn't come to mine is petty. And here's the thing, you have every right to be petty. Just because something's petty doesn't necessarily mean that it's the wrong thing for you to do. But I think it's really important for OP in this situation to understand where that's coming from and acknowledge the level of pettiness. I do think that would be really important. And my biggest crux of this, actually, and I wonder if it would change OP's viewpoints and whether she'd feel comfortable being a maid of honor, is the fact that you guys didn't talk a lot afterwards. You were hurt, OP. You were hurt a lot. You saw this as a betrayal for one of the biggest moments for you, and you haven't spoken much. It was last year and she got engaged now. You haven't spoken much in between. I really would encourage you guys to have that conversation. I wonder, have you said to your sister, dude, I wanted you to be there for me and you weren't there for me? And that's going to be a hard conversation to have, but what I'm hoping OP's sister would say is, and I feel awful. I am so sorry, but I couldn't have given you what you needed. And it's because of crappy timing, which actually isn't anybody's fault. And I feel like if we had the power to force two people in a room and have really honest and vulnerable conversation, so much could be fixed. I wonder if coming out of that kind of discussion would make OP feel a lot lighter and be able to separate the two sort of weddings as different instances as a result. So is OP the drama for saying no? Do I think it's dramatic to say no? Yes, but are you the drama for saying no? There are three things conflicting within me, and that's one, I don't think OP genuinely understands that it wasn't a prioritizing, it was just bad timing. And bad timing happens even at weddings, and that sucks. But really, do you want to lose an entire relationship with a sister over something that was just bad timing? It just makes me feel sad. The second thing is you are under no obligation to be a maid of honor if you don't want to, which automatically makes me think, no, you are not the drama. You are absolutely not the drama. It's your prerogative as to whether you want to. And then the third thing being, whilst I do genuinely feel in my gut that OP's sister was not wrong to do what she did, is also not what I would have done. So I'm trying to battle all of those together. I'm gonna say, oh, no drama here. This is my badge, specifically for the question of, are you being the drama for saying no to being a maid of honor now, for this wedding now? No drama here. It is your prerogative to say no. You don't have to do anything that you don't want to do, but I do think you need to recognize that is coming from a place of pettiness. The impact of that will be longer lasting, and that your reason for doing this now will be personally motivated and fueled, whereas your your sister's reason for doing it then was not personal at all. And I just think sitting on a therapy couch, not even with a therapist, just with each other in a giant tub of ice cream would really be able to bring you guys together. Should we see what other people have to say? Oh, I'm going to try and be objective because I'm a big animal lover, says a Peach. This is a Peach comment. Have you ever owned a pet? Because a lot of non-pet owners don't understand that pets are cherished family members. Exactly. I understand why your sister didn't go to your wedding, especially since the death was sudden. That being said, I also understand why you were hurt, especially since the dog was old. All good things. I'm hearing all of these things. At the same time, there is no badge. No. Or if you're doing this out of spite, then you are the drama. If you're sincerely declining because you don't want to be a maid of honor, not the drama. Oh, interesting. I kind of disagree with this one because, and again, I'm just being honest, I don't think OP would like it if I said this. Whichever way you spin it, this is out of spite, babe. This is out of spite. It doesn't make it wrong, but it's important to recognize. Call a turd, you know? Oh, not the drama. It doesn't matter the reason, spite or not, anyone is allowed to decline being someone's maid of honor without being judged. Yeah, I agree, which is why I think I'm coming to no drama here as my resolution. No drama here. It was bad timing, but no one's fault. Oh, I promise you I didn't write this comment. She would have been a terrible maid of honor while dealing with that initial grief, so it's probably best that she wasn't there sobbing next to you. It sounds like she never acknowledged how much her absence hurts you, though. If you can't be there for her in good conscience, then declining is appropriate. However, the bitterness won't be satisfied. Pog comment. This is exactly how I feel. And maybe if I was being forced to ask if, like, who was more in the wrong or not, I would suggest that OP is more in the wrong for being this petty now. But I, again, think that that wouldn't be the case if she understood that back then it wasn't because of you. I also understand, though, that sense of compromise. One of my questions for my sister would be like, but why couldn't you be there for a little bit? Why couldn't you have tried? Why couldn't you have been there for a photo? Why couldn't you have been there to just be some part of my day, even though you were grieving? And I think that's where I'm coming from in saying that's what I would do. Even if I was really, really upset, I pop my dress on, I would try my best, and I would be there for a part of the day, and if I couldn't handle it, I would leave. But I also recognize everybody has their own limits, and we need to respect that within a person. That definition of trying their best is different within every person, and we shouldn't judge someone if they are just physically not capable of putting on that brave face if they're not there in their grief journey. That's okay. Not the drama. Your relationship with your sister has been damaged. Some commenters think losing a 14-year-old dog is justifiable reason for bailing on a sibling's wedding. I think your sibling bailing on your wedding is a justifiable reason for feeling so let down by them it damages your relationship. You do not have to be anyone's maid of honor if you don't want to. Everyone seems to be so divided on this. Someone else has replied to that and say, right, these comments are ridiculous. I would have shown up for my sister. It wasn't a birthday dinner, it was a wedding, for Christ's sake. My sisters both have dogs that they love, clearly. They would have shown up for me. OP, you and your sister are not as close as you think. Shaking my head. I'm not sure if I agree with that at all. I have been in a place of largely overthinking right now. You are the drama. Your sister probably saved your wedding by not showing up as an emotional wreck and taking attention away from you and your husband from people trying to console her. I've had co-workers miss a week of mourning the loss of their cats and dogs. So it's a big deal for some pet owners because that's their baby and their family members are gone. I think you could be a bit more forgiving. And another you're the drama, just because you've placed little value on her dog's life doesn't mean that she feels the same. I've got a 14-year-old dog and when he dies, I'll be absolutely rough. She was grieving a significant loss and you're choosing to hold it against her and be petty. Another you're the drama. She's grieving for a pet she had for half of her entire life. I do see this at the same time. You've been sisters for her entire life. Like, not just half of her life, her entire life. So I think it's really difficult. That's what I'm saying. It's not a prioritizing of dog versus sister. It's just bad timing. And it's what someone feels that they can deal with in that moment. It's so incredibly petty that you're holding that grief against her. That total lack of understanding makes you the drama. Ooh, this one has been very divisive. Peaches, let me know your thoughts. I'm so intrigued to know where you stand on this. And if there is a... No one seemed to say no... Oh, one person said no drama here. Okay, yeah. Everyone else seemed to be opposite. I seem to be full of hot takes today. I apologize. Do I? No, I don't. But I do welcome discussion as long as it is kind. Oh, drama. These have been heavy. This has been long. Would I be the drama? Says a Peach submission on the 1-800-DRAMA subreddit. Please do remember that if you would like to help a fellow Peach out, you can join the 1-800-DRAMA subreddit. If you want to submit your own drama there, you can do that too for a bunch of advice. The Peaches are very kind. Would I be the drama for writing POC characters in my novel as a white person? Interesting. Helio28 says, hello everyone. Hello. So for a few years, I've had this idea of writing a book about asexuality for the LGBTQIA+ collection of a small editor with whom I've worked for a collective book in 2021. I wanted to write about asexuality because I'm asexual myself and we need representation, and an idea of a novel came to my mind. How exciting. We love a diverse book range. I wrote a few chapters, but a problem quickly stopped me from writing further. I'm white and I want 2 of my 3 main characters to be POC, and I don't know how to do that well. Interesting. One of the characters is somehow inspired from a cousin of mine who was adopted from Ethiopia at 4 years old and grew up with almost no elements of her native culture. In Bunnies, Helio has written being black but feeling feeling white. The other POC would be born in Switzerland or moved to Switzerland as a baby with his parents from Turkey. I chose Turkey by analysing migrant waves in Switzerland. He was born in the late 80s, and that last character is white. This is interesting. One is coming from a personal experience that you've drawn about and are fascinated by. Another has come from genuine research. The last character is drawing from your own personal experience, as you know. I think all of that sounds fine, to be honest, so far. The question is, what do you do with it, right, to make them authentic? I also feel quite excited about the idea of the whole, quote, being black but feeling white. I feel like this, obviously, POC storylines are just not present generally, so being able to look at the nuances within that is even more fascinating and even more underrepresented currently. They're all asexual, says Helio, but with their own unique experience, and I feel like I've heard so much about that I'm able to portray that part of them easily. But I might not know enough about living as a person of colour to make an accurate representation. I fear that it might be worse depicting a person of colour badly than having the three main characters all be white, but it's hard for me to imagine going back and changing them into white people now that I've lived for over 2 years with them in my mind. And also, asexuality is not just a white people's thing. Absolutely. Shout out to Yasmin Benoit. I'd love to have people of colour among my friends to ask for advice, but I don't have that many friends, and they are all white. Sorry, I thought you were saying you don't have many friends who are POC, but it's just I don't have many friends, and the ones that I do are all white. Bless you, sweet. I don't know how or where to look, and I'm afraid that if people don't know me or aren't familiar with important subjects of my book like asexuality or gender fluidity, read my story for feedback, it could be hard for me to welcome. Also, it would be asking minorities to educate me on their experience, which Helio says can be frustrating for them. I do understand that. At the same time, I do think that if it's for the benefit of representation, as long as you're not feeling like someone is obligated to give you that experience just because they're a person of colour, it's fine to ask if they'd be willing to help. And 9 times out of 10, I feel like people with marginalised characteristics are very happy to, because as you said, we'd all much rather better and more accurate representation, right? So, asks Helio, would I be the drama for trying to depict people of colour in a novel as a white person? Do you have any advice? Thank you so much. And Peaches, if you have advice, please do pop it downstairs for Helio here in the comment section or over on the subreddit, where Helio will definitely be able to see. I love the fact that someone is wanting to do this, and honestly, it didn't even cross my mind that as a white person, sorry, I was just thinking about how that could be taken a little bit problematically, but I'll finish my sentence. How as a white person, of course you can write people of colour. I'm trying to think of whole worlds, right? Books are written by one author, predominantly. 99.9% of the time, there are whole worlds created by one person, and all of these characters are different. If you could only write about your experience, we wouldn't have any character divergence at all. Diversity? Divergence? There's a word. Variance? You know what I mean. The majority of books in the world are romance novels between men and women, and authors who are women absolutely can write about the position of a man, or vice versa. But then you also have those terrible examples, right, on like men writing women, where they get it very, very wrong. So yes, absolutely. As a white person, you can write people of colour. I do not think you are the drama. I think you could be the drama if you didn't put in the work to research and look for that accurately. And I understand that that also comes with a level of accessibility and privilege. If as a white person you cannot afford to do sensitivity reads or to interview people, and you're not finding people who will give you that free time, I do think it would be wrong of you to make assumptions and build in POC traits to a character where you don't have any basis for that experience. I would rather therefore see that project not go out in that regard than with wrong assumptions. But I also know that there are huge levels of funding, and two, to just ask people out of grace and from trying to do the right thing, if people would be willing to sensitivity read for you. And it doesn't have to be whole chapters or whole books, right? It can be excerpts, or it can be interviews talking about a character that you can then draw from. I wish you the best of luck, Helio. I do not think that you are the drama. I'm excited for your little project to come out and be more representation, which, of course, any marginalised community could really use right now. And I hope you have fun, because I know for me, discovering that experience, interviewing other people, thinking about those things and learning from those moments is something that I would just like so thoroughly enjoy. That's why I do these podcasts. We learn so much from the storytelling of other people. Not the drama, says One Peach. I don't think there's anything wrong with asking POC asexuals about their experiences. Hell, I'm a POC asexual. Peach, I see you. And I've never been shy about talking about it, and I doubt other people would be offended or anything like that. I suppose if you can't find anyone in your personal life, there are people on YouTube, like this community, as well, that you can use to help inspire how you want to write that last character. Absolutely. Or even within community groups. So, little shout out, there is a fan-made Discord called the Spud Army, which is sort of like Jamie and Shaba communities that come together and ask and talk about things. Anything. There's like a spicy pet channel on there for just cute animal pics and things like this, where you can just find your safe zone of community to ask these questions and see who might be willing to help out. Who knows? Maybe you're going to make like a new friend, because you said that you don't have many friends that are not white, and that could end up being a really fun way. You know, in 4 years' time, when you've got your bestie and you're like, oh yeah, we met over my project. no drama here. I wonder if you post in the Ace Era communities, you might find some willing beta readers. I love that too. See, this is the power of the internet. This is the power of the internet. I'm going to leave these examples here for you. Please do read out the comment pause if you need to. I'd also love to read the anthology. Yay! Someone else has said, check out the website Writing with Color. There are a lot of resources there for you. It's an issue that I've also come across. My best advice is start being interested in whiteness and telling the story of that. But yes, it's okay and good to have POC characters too, with research and sensitivity readers. I think that's fair. Yeah, absolutely. The only thing that I was questioning there was just like starting with this idea of whiteness. I do think that it's perfectly fine too, that if you wanted to go in not with the idea of whiteness as your beginning point, that's also okay. I, for example, have been writing for the longest time a story about someone who is not me, but of someone who is 2 generations above me. And that's been a really interesting learning curve. I've spoken to other people talking about it. I've looked at things from comedy shows to movies and read other books to kind of get that experience, and spoken to people in my life as well. And I don't think with creative projects that you want to be meaningful and impactful and tell a story that provides representation, that has to be done always starting from who you are. I go back to every book ever made that has more than one character. Women write about men, men write about women. I wish Friends had more diversity and that there was a POC member of that initial group. And I think we need to make it less scary for the people of privilege who often have these opportunities, which are white people, to feel like they're intimidated by the idea of representation. Because that's how we're going to get representation out there, baby. Not the drama. If everyone could only write from their own experiences, then novels would be incredibly boring. Exactly this. Oh, no drama here. Of course, that's a badge. Yeah, I changed my badge to that. If everyone could only write from their own experiences, then novels would be incredibly boring. Exactly this, babe. Exactly this. And similar to what this comment is saying, absolutely reach out to your cousin too, if that's something that you want to do, and be like, hey, I'm really interested in knowing a little bit more about your experience. Do you think we could have a chat about that over a pizza sometime? But best of luck, Helio. This sounds so much fun, and thank you for giving us a cute, lighter story to end on. Thank you so much, Peaches, for watching this episode. If you made it all the way through, congratulations to you. Remember that you can take a look at Surfshark. The details are downstairs for all of your VPN needs. And I'm also going to leave the little link to my Staying Groovy pre-save. The song sounds a little bit like this.
They say when you smile on the inside. Maybe I'm not doing it right. Tried 1,000 times, but I still feel a little blue.
I will also say I am so thoroughly enjoying seeing your comments ever since I made that short asking you guys to stream my music, which felt really icky. It's been so sweet to see people be like, I didn't even know you made music. Or, oh my gosh, I've just had a chance to listen to your music because I didn't realize how important it was to you. Thank you. I like it. And it's so sweet to see these comments. I don't have a lot of time to reply to comments. I'm not always in the best headspace to kind of go on the internet and see loads of opinions, which are often very personal about me. So if I haven't responded, please don't think that I don't care. I'm so grateful, and I will respond to as much as I can. Thank you as always for your support, and you can pre-save Staying Groovy, which will be out on the 20th of June very soon. That rhymed and I didn't mean it to. If you enjoyed this video, do give it a thumbs up, subscribe if you'd like to see more. Lots of people don't realize they're not subbed, so check that little sub button, baby, and I'll catch you with another episode. Be kind and have a great day. Bye.